Okay, great. See, you're muted.
Okay.
Great.
So at the beginning of last December, I started getting these phrases in my head around 4 a.m. And then I'd wake up and I'd write a poem down. And I kept thinking, well, this is the last one. And the last one, it turned out there were 33 poems and 22 haikus in the series, and they're all about love. The first poem is called Change. And a great change came upon the land that affected all living things. Even the animals, the plants, and the forests became more sensitized to the difference in people. For the change affected humans most of all. It began with staying at home, which was hardest on those living alone. But something interesting also happened in places that had previously been wiped clean of inhabitants of the natural world. Since there were fewer humans around, mammals, insects, and other species returned to places they had long abandoned for fear of the human race. Even so, the enormous amount of change affected all life on Earth, bringing loss, and loss brought grief. Most tried to carry on as much as possible as they did before, all the while noticing out of the corners of their eyes and in traces of their feelings that nothing was the same. The extra stress caused an overload in many brains and bodies. Where did I put that thing? What was that person's name? Why am I so tired all the time? And when is this going to be over so life can be normal once more? A few wise ones used it to open their hearts, thereby creating a new normal. They let themselves feel more love, compassion, and kindness. They let their tears flow as healing to the world and all beings experiencing devastation, believing that love connects us all, knowing that love is a balm for the growing pains of the world. An open heart that turns toward love can increase consciousness, can create change that restores the earth, can heal our aching, tender, broken hearts, can change the world. And this one is my favorite. And if we have a second, I'll turn the computer toward my companion here after I read it. And I dedicated this to my best boy Thunder on what would have been his birthday. It's called Live Like a Dog. In the midst of chaos, can we be calm? In times of uncertainty, can we still move forward? When order breaks down, will we find the heart to go on? Can we remain centered while experiencing upheaval? And when it feels that nothing is going right, are we able to do what we can and let the rest go? When disappointment reigns, will refocusing on something positive alleviate it? Does expressing ourselves creatively animate others to do something creative? Can individual actions make the world better or have enough of an effect to matter? And while we're taking care of others, can we still take care of ourselves? When our hearts hurt, seeing so much suffering in the new world we are experiencing, will we turn toward love or stew in our despair? Will we choose love as the only thing that it makes sense for us to be and to express? Can pain and sorrow lead us through a new doorway, even when feeling trepidation moving through it? A new space where we realize that being in the moment helps us to appreciate what's right in front of us, find beauty and life in nature. The answer to all these questions is to live like a dog. A dog always lives in the moment. A dog is always present, even in the midst of difficult or frightening circumstances. Dogs are masters of how to have fun. A dog doesn't hold grudges. They teach us how to love. Thank you.
Are you going to turn the camera?
Huh?
Are you going to turn the camera?
Oh, yes, thank you. Here she is. This is her sleeping time. Can you see her? This is Ebony. She's black, so she's kind of blending. She is my partner in crime, and she is my master teacher of how to have fun. So, thank you.
Beautiful. Julie, did you have Julie has a hand up, but not connecting. So, Julie?
Oh no, it was the clapping hand. Did I click the wrong one?
Oh,
Sorry.
I thought it was you wanted to say something or ask something. I'm sorry. Okay. No worries. Next, could we go to Kylie? Are you ready, Kylie?
Yeah, thank you.
Great.
I'm gonna share my screen. So I'm going to share these poem collages from a book that I wrote that's actually freshly out in the world called The Fever Poems. This is an image from the cover. I wrote this book over the course of a few months last summer when the pandemic and a lot of other things, were going on. So I'm going to read a very short poem and then I'll just say a little bit about the artwork. "2 years following to seek, and at last we could see the range. It was a horse's back laid with grass and streams for us to navigate. So loaded was the water with silk, it rubbed against the night. We made contact with its grandeur, and with this we made our way leaving, to climb the thaw, to chance the wall the axe refused, and we returned as though dependent on several occasions, to knife and sketch the wide field where we were bitten with the lure, to follow the headwaters, to persist. We were at the drawing board with the chance to begin. We were at the beginning with the rewards of fever." So I was using a source text of an Arctic travel narrative, which was a way that I could sort of transpose fever as a metaphor into climate change, but also at a time when it was a very, very literal thing with COVID. And it was just a way that I could really sort of move in and out of my body and the world and feel the separation and also feel the continuity between the two of them. And this was a very, very physical project. I was literally sitting at a desk for every day. I would write one of these and just crank out a poem. And it was an intuitive process and it was exciting and really scary. Because it was this desolate landscape that was being created in these poems and in the imagery. And the limitation was reflective of so much that was going on, but also the fervor with which I was writing them was too. So it's really just this strange thing that occurred and felt like a perfect meeting place of sickness in, a very physical, global sense, but also like the physicality of our globe. There's a lot to say about it, so I'm really trying to keep it focused to the theme here, which is deeply in the whole book and all the poems. So yeah, we can talk about it later, but thank you for including this. And I'll stop the share now.
I don't think that's wonderful. I want to ask you at the end when we have Q&A, I want to ask you more about the sources of the pictures as well as the words. So we could go to Carla. Carla Cooke, ready?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carla Manene Cooke, and it's an honor to be here tonight. I'm delighted to be in such great company. This online exhibit is an amazing response to the challenging times we're in. Many thanks to the Forbes Library staff, particularly Faith and Art, who did an incredible job putting this show together. I grew up in the woods in New York State, and I probably learned to climb trees and to read at about the same time. I have written most of my life for lots of reasons: record keeping, note taking, journaling, problem solving, venting, and coping with life in general. Over the years, I have found that I also love writing creatively with others. Thank you, Amherst Writers and Artists Method. Thank you, Straw Dog Writers Guild. Thank you, my many wonderful writing sisters. I have long appreciated good writing, and through the years, I've helped other people improve their work through my wordsmithing skills. However, it's always been difficult for me to know what's good in my own writing and how to approve it. I have written poems intermittently over the years, and I have recently begun to use poetry to refine my tendency to over-elaborate. The limitation of writing within this relatively short form frees me from my innate desire and inclination to be accurate, correct, and complete in my storytelling. And only recently have I dared submit a few pieces of my own work in any public forum. In the 25 years I've lived in Northampton, I have often attended receptions in the Hosmer Gallery, but never have the exhibits included my own work. I was so pleased to have my submission accepted as part of this extraordinary exhibit.
Okay, thanks.
My poem, Hearing Trees, was inspired by a few lines from The World by Jennifer Chang. She wrote, "I was not the only one who saw or heard the trees, their diffidence greater than my noise. May we all stop and listen while we can." Hearing Trees. If we would only pause and listen, maybe we could hear the trees above the sound of our own footsteps, our beating hearts, our busy minds. We rush and move so fast, missing all they have to offer. If only we would stop, create a moment in our days, a pause, to see them for what they are. We don't know them as we scurry to and fro. We judge them by their beauty, destroy them unopposed. They cannot protest or take a stand despite their roots. They're helpless to resist the harm we inflict for whim or money. Trees' lives tick slowly by, a narrow growth ring, an incremental spread, the only proof of progress toward maturity, too subtle to be seen from year to year. With time's passage, seedling turns to sapling, leaves unfurl, spread, and grow, then color, fade, and fall as seasons slip away. A decade runs its course, and on a summer day, shade spreads its cool blanket where none once lay. A breeze brushes leaf to leaf. If we let the muffled murmur stop our minds, we can hear the singing of the trees. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Carla. That was wonderful. I'm going to ask Naila, are you ready? Okay, so Naila Moreira is next.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for your forbearance. I'm so happy to be with you all and to have had the opportunity to read your amazing words and see your beautiful images, beautiful and heartrending and difficult sometimes. So I'm going to read two poems out of the group that I submitted. The first one is related to, I think we've all been under a lot of psychic pressure over the last few years, and this poem was written amid the collision of several, the pandemic, the Trump presidency, and also my my pregnancy. I had my baby 2 months after the pandemic started, and I wrote this poem when I was right about ending my pregnancy, coming close to his birth. So it is called Love in the Time of the Virus, after the book by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. In the quiet, the oven purrs, a chesty exhale of preheating by my belly, 7 months along, while the sky in flat pewter turns a plate-like face over my life. Provision or its lack, a world indifferent to us. Far from here, the border stretches its infinite calculus beneath hard blue. The desert glares like a political regime. Meanwhile, the murmur from appliances, devices, in my well-stocked kitchen. I make lists, get things done, a good citizen. I walk each day the asphalt path under the trees, avoiding my neighbors, a good citizen. God knows we all have this disease. And then the second poem, I'm happy that I came on after Kylie, because the cutout poetry is actually the way I started the next poem I'm going to read. I wrote the poem using mostly cutout words from a Guardian poem of the day, which came with commentary. The poem was by Jane Comain, and the commentary by Carol Rumens. The poem is titled Our Lady of the Rain, and it focuses on a kind of a mild, sorrowful goddess of decay, like a natural ancient goddess, pagan goddess. My poem, I really wanted something a little more, a figure of sort of more vengeful energy or fury, which is what I really believe that the destructive forces that we're unleashing are kind of an ecological goddess of. So she's coming, and I'll just share my screen so that you can see the cutout, which is not actually what's in the exhibit. After seeing Kylie's work, I wish it had been, but here's the poem. The Great Society. Midas cleansed. Blueprints chronicling now roofless warehouses, machinery, corroded girders, decades, angles, mold. Possession succumbing to rust. A feminine presence lingers here, pagan outrage, frustrated goddess, nostalgia for the elements, once and yet to be crops the gold of corn, Our Lady of Destruction. Dread pebbles the skin. Derelict cathedral, factory of shadows, capital crumbling, danged out, these iron times of myth and temptation, soundlessly declining to darkness. Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you, Naila. That was wonderful. I like seeing the process, annotating. So next is Mary Wheelan. He was here. Is Mary still here? Okay, well, we'll move on and we'll come back. So Melissa McClung
Hi.
has made a video, and you'll just tell me when you want it shared, all right?
Oh, you can start sharing it right away. So while I talk to you all about my process making this short film, it's 4 minutes long. We can just play it in the background without sound. Can everyone hear me okay? Let's see, okay. So I'm Melissa. I'm a filmmaker and I'm a film teacher at PVPA, and I'm also on the board of Northampton Open Media. And I started my film Elevator of Earthly Destruction because Northampton Open Media has a 7-day film sprint where they give you a prompt and you just make a film in 7 days. And this was right before the pandemic. And I didn't have a crew or a cast at the moment. And so I decided that I wanted to make a film from archival footage, which is kind of apt because of all the found poetry that we're reading tonight. So I went and used a website called the Prelinger Archives, which is out of San Francisco. They have a lot of royalty-free footage. And I started putting together this film. My prompt, I think, for the contest was elevators and dinosaurs or something, and explosions. And so I had to kind of put those together in my brain, and I started thinking about this man that I found this amazing footage of this man riding up to the top of a building to commit suicide, I'm sorry to say, from the 50s. And so I started, and I put him together, and I started to think about how he could ride through the history of time and witness all of the destruction that we've had, either natural, like an asteroid hitting the Earth, or at this moment, this is a little further along in the film, he's coming up and it's going to be total destruction, and it's kind of it's thinking about climate change. So I stitched together the footage using some rotoscoping animation techniques. So this is a lot of different footage from a lot of different archival films. And then he wants out. So he leaves all of the people talking about climate change, basically, or about legislation, and goes on a journey through the ocean. And I'll just conclude by saying I had a lot of fun because like some of the other people that we've been hearing from tonight, I didn't really have a plan for this film. I kind of just let the footage speak to me, and it became this film about climate change. And if we get to this point, he eventually leaves the Earth and goes on a rocket ship to Mars. And as I made this film before the pandemic, but I think it's just become more and more relevant as I was watching Jeff Bezos and the billionaire space race, I was like, oh my goodness, it's my film. So that's, I don't know, that I guess that kind of concludes what I was thinking about and my process with the film. And I think also, I guess the last thing I'll just leave you with is that I make a lot of different kinds of films. I make documentary films, I make fiction films, and this is sort of a, an more experimental film. And I'm just finding that more and more, every single film I make, I just can't get away from putting it in the lens of climate change, and whether subconsciously or consciously. And it's been a really interesting progression with my films, because even if I go out and intend to make something that isn't necessarily to do with that, I just find that that's what's coming up for me. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I think I had some technical difficulties sharing it. Were you able to see it? After yeah, the first minute I didn't get, I'm sorry, but you can all go back and watch it with its actual soundtrack through Labor Day. It's still up. That was great, Melissa, thank you.
Thank you so much for including me in this exhibition. And also the other artists, it's been awesome hearing your work.
Yeah, it has been awesome. Patricia Crosby, are you here? And
I'm here. Back.
Wonderful.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
By the way, I got cut off.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh. So who are we doing? Shall I go?
This is Patricia.
Patricia, yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't get my camera working tonight. It's really nice to see all your faces. I wish you could see mine. I'm nodding and smiling, but
we do too.
So I have 2 poems. One's about a page long. I always like to know how long something is before I hear it. And then one is quite short. Questions in COVID, March 2020. Can you make wipes? What can I cook with these mint flakes in the cupboard? Does anyone around sell sewing machines? Are they essential? Can you make disinfectant? How short of breath? Of bleach, peroxide, and rubbing alcohol, which is best? Can I pick up that pen with my foot and get it back in my hand without ever moving my face and gaze from the screen where my colleagues look back? How can I use this star anise? Where did those all Bali leggings go, the ones that were fine for home? Isn't whole wheat everything a bit much? Have they run out of junk food too? Oreos, fluff, a little soft, white, dry corns might be a solace. Why can't we just use paper napkins for toilet paper? There's plenty on the shelf. Why did people know only about toilet paper getting scarce and nothing else? Is this glass clean? This towel, sink, sponge, this counter, sink, faucet, knife, fork, spoon, handle, floor, jam, sink, arm, back edge, tip top, table lid, keypad, mouthpiece, earbud, remote. Oh God, please don't say the word remote ever again. Toothbrush, soap, cloth, dial, switch, pull chain, latch, hinge, and who ever knew we touched so much? There's something I need. I need to go out. Where did I put my keys 2 weeks ago? Is there any gas? Do I still have to wait at this endless traffic light with no one in sight? Now I'm in town, on second thought, do I really need to go through that tiny front doorway into those little narrow aisles into that old stuffy shop? If I park right here and just do nothing, will anyone care? Do I need to put money in the meter? Why do I feel like just napping here in the middle of the day? Where on earth, literally on earth, does that bus think it's going? What destination could that packed to the gills SUV possibly have? Why does home look so dreary now that I'm back? Why, when I finally have time to do everything, is there nothing I want to do? This one is called Month 13 in Isolation, 2021. Yesterday, I talked to Don. I knew him once as a friend. Now he's the mailman. I stood on the bank and he stood on the road, unbothered by those anxious for any arrival, even junk mail. We talked and talked, road to bank, bank to road, unmasked, though well apart, breath to harmless breath escaping between us till he had to go. It was Maundy Thursday, Old English maund, basket, or any gift or offering contained in a basket. The air so moist, so sweet. The dry and yellowed grass that was my heart wept with relief. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Those are wonderful. So Jason Montgomery is next, and I'm going to share my screen with Jason's work. Which one do you want first?
Either of them. It's your dealer's choice. Hauka, hola, hello. My name is Jason Montgomery. I am a Chicano of Native California descent artist who lives and works in East Hampton. So either piece you want to put up, I'm good with. Just throw it on up there. This is an exciting crew to be a part of, and kind of a fun night to hear poetry. I haven't been at a good reading in a while. So thank you to everybody. So the first piece in the days of COVID is pretty self-explanatory. This piece is titled Stay Home. Like all of my pieces, I work in a three-phase process. Usually I start with an original collage piece. This particular image came off of a canvas. I normally don't work on canvas, but I was literally like everyone else at home. So I was kind of set up a little painting and workstation in the corner and was trucking along, just making things. Normally I work more on installation pieces, which is actually where the second piece comes from. So what I do is I usually start in three phases. I start with the collection of collage materials. I normally work with collage materials from around the early 1900s, and I normally will stop at 1978, that time period of any kind of ephemera and get my hands on. I like for those who aren't super familiar with Native American issues, 1978 was the passage of the Native American Religion Act, which gave Native American people the rights to practice their religion in the United States. So I like to stop it there because I kind of try to view these as a spiritual interaction. Then what I do after I create the collage, unlike most collage artists, I'm not necessarily all that interested when I'm creating the original piece about a lot of collage people. They're going after these surreal images, and I'm not really terribly concerned about them. There's not really any thought or process that goes into getting the original collages onto whatever the medium. And then I overpaint those with iconography that you can find in indigenous California and Baja, Mexico, cave paintings and some pottery. I go over them with these images and really kind of look to create something that's pretty discordant. And then I'll go back through and I'll take high resolution photographs of individual areas of the original collage, and then I'll adapt those through a variety of digital pieces to create these third images. It's funny, this image called Black Lung, actually, it was part of my residency at the Ready White Gallery right before we closed down. So I was making this piece and kind of really thinking about the public health issue of tobacco use, and kind of its where's my work on exhibit? You can find it on our website, Attack Bear Press. I've got a show coming up in North Carolina. There's some stuff up here and there. If you go to Gallery 263 in Boston, I'm in their flat files. Go to Attack Bear Press. You can find my stuff there. So like I said, I was really kind of meditating on the idea of kind of the sacrilege of tobacco use. Tobacco being one of the three kind of high herbs, or like really sacred herbs. And some would say that it's probably the most, that's me, the most sacred of all. For my people, it's not, but particularly for First Nations people in and around this area, it's really an important herb, and kind of how that was taken and twisted and literally turned from a medicine into like this cause of sickness. And it was funny when this call came out and I started thinking about the idea of environment, health, there was this kind of weird thing between the social aspect of tobacco and because as I'm going through these things, specifically the ephemera, there was like tobacco's got a funky history when it comes to how we advertise it. Like there's make friends with Charleston. It's crazy. But there's this like push towards like a very social engagement around this thing that makes you so, that just destroys you. And I had lost a friend to lung cancer a while back from smoking, and it just decimates the body and decimates the soul and really breaks the person. And then while at the same time sitting in this environment, this little house I share with my partner, and at that point my two children, who half the year they're with their mother in Los Angeles and half the year they're with me. And my oldest is a giant. He's just about 6'5", 240, and he's 14 years old. And so we're in this tiny apartment, isolating for our safety with this huge kid, and this as I was ruminating on these two things about like how twisted we've become around our interaction with the sacred, with the divine, and with our environment, and this kind of isolation that we need to be in, and we continue to need to be in. Like this, like the pandemic's not over, like it's not done, and how it's almost as though like we're ignoring importance to entertain ourselves to death, and like trying to balance those two things in both of these images. And so I'm really grateful that you displayed them both, because I'm really not good at talking about my work. So I'm sure like what I sent you was nonsense. It's like, there are two pictures, they do things. So yeah, that's the art for this exhibit and this exhibition. And it's like, I've gone through this whole thing a few times now, and it's just this beautiful kind of like almost prayer to the natural world and to humanity to get our shit together. And so thank you artists and writers for that. Like it's a very beautiful thing. So that I'm done.
Thank you, Jason. They're wonderful, really thought-provoking. So Mary, can we see and hear you? Zoom dropped you at some point, but I'm hoping if you unmute and you speak.
I'm unmuted, yeah.
You're good.
Okay.
All right, great.
All right.
Mary Wheelan.
I have two poems. The first one is called Planet. I listen to Planet by Kitaro and let peace wash over me in waves of sound. And I think about Mother Earth and how much better off she is with so many of us at home. Wildlife are roaming streets, wondering where we all are. Air pollution has lessened. The Himalayas are no longer hidden by smog. People are finding ways to safely communicate with others via Zoom, social media, and more. Word is that meat bait may be hard to come by soon, yet that is not such a big deal. A big deal is the virus that so many have, and so many have died from. It is a big deal to the families they leave behind as well. May we all listen to our planet like the children say we must. For 1921. Yesterday, we gathered together with family, most of us fully vaccinated. We still played it safe. We gathered outdoors for a barbecue on a cool April day. We sat around a fire to keep warm. It was a joy to see relatives, especially children. We finally got to meet Bertha, who was born shortly after the pandemic began. She walks now and even tries to climb. She can talk as well. Things can change a great deal in a little over a year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Beautiful. So I'm going to ask Ron Gallagher to unmute.
All right, here I am.
Do you want me to put your work up on the screen, or do you want to do that?
Yeah, please.
I'll, does it matter which one goes first?
Not at all.
Okay. It'll be there in a moment.
No problem.
Okay.
Okay. First of all, I want to, I feel honored to be amongst all you people. I've had a career that was so far removed from art. You couldn't get much further being in art and doing art and being around artists, which I've chosen to do lately, has just been extremely rewarding. So what I decided to do as I started to shift my life into a different phase was to start taking some classes at Holyoke Community College, which they do have an excellent art program, as some of you probably already know. And I took 2 printmaking classes. The other piece would be the first one. This is from the second one, but I can talk about this. This is basically like a lino cut, but it's in kind of a rubbery type of stamp material. This is me. And what I did is I took a photograph of myself and then I manipulated it in such a way where if you could see each one of these images is 2 images, but I carved them both out. And then I used it as a stamp to repeatedly stamp it. This was in the, kind of in the middle of the pandemic last spring. I call this Covet Dystopia, as I'm sure we all were feeling. And for me, it was about spending a lot of time in my own little head. So that's why I shot it. The image was a photograph that based on looking down, self-portrait looking down, mostly at my eyes and my top of my head and just a little bit up the bottom of my face. And it's about all I could say about that one.
Okay, just a sec.
No problem.
Is the other one up now?
Yeah.
Okay.
This one here is what is called a monoprint. And basically it's based on, again, another self-portrait. It's called The Mask. And the way, some of you might know this, but I never knew it until I took this class. Basically, a monoprint is using ink that, in this particular case, I painted onto a piece of like a plexiglass. It's called a Akua plate. And then you make one print. And that's it. And if you want to make another one, you got to repaint it. You can pull off a couple other images off of the first print, but they're more like a ghost type of image. And this was for, again, an HCC class that I had to take. And it kind of reflected where, I was, and I'm sure everyone was back in the fall of last year, 2020. The whole mask thing. And, of course, now it's appropriate again. And that's about it. And I really appreciate being part of this. And like I said, I'm pretty honored, especially someone who just started taking art classes.
Thank you so much, Ron. I really love these. I like with the Covet Dystopia, the way it repeats, but they're not all the same. And it is like something like slightly off kilter that just makes you just keep staring at it and can't stop. So I really loved that piece.
Yeah, because I think it represents everyone being off kilter. I still haven't got back to kilter, whatever that is. If you find it, let me know.
All right. Marisca Pichette is next. Can you unmute?
Yes. Thank you, Faith. And thank you to everyone who's already gone and everyone who participated in the exhibit. I'm really in awe of all the different works, both the prose and poetry and the multimedia works. Hi, I'm in Deerfield and the ancestral lands of the Pecumtuck and Abenaki peoples. And my 3 poems that were included in the exhibit, I'll read them because they're pretty short, are all dealing with some themes that I tend to deal with a lot in my writing. I actually don't primarily write poetry. I'm primarily a fiction writer. I write a lot of horror and other science fiction fantasy. My quick plug, my debut novel is coming out next August, August 2022. It's called Broken. I'm very, very excited about that. So these 3 poems deal with themes of climate change and nature and memory, and really how the memory of humanity is really deeply tied to landscape and how that landscape has changed through humanity and by what we've done. So the first one is called Cracks. I rather think that the world is made up of cracks instead of things. Cracks in fences and cracks in glass, in heirlooms and in clothing seams. The trees are made of cracks of light, with scraggly bark and webs of limbs, pointed leaves and wandering stems. Birds are built from cracks, from their beaks down to their feet. Feather cracks and pattern cracks, curving, clawed, neat. Time is all of cracks as well. We watch them grow and stretch, paint that flecks and peels in fainting cracks of stress. Wood that ages, shrinks and withers and soon begins to bow. Weight applied to 2 old benches breaks the cracks, shatters the body, hardly remembered now. The world is made of many things, but in them all, deep down between, are little cracks and little seams. The second poem is called Again the Blood. Sing to me, earth, of the blackest day you formed when we were busy learning the boundaries of our land. Sing of cells and life and trees, behind, ahead, in memory. Sing to us that same tune, the song we never heard. Sing again. Sing again. Sing when all is deaf and gone. Keep your singing. When we've taken every branch, every bomb. Sing the song that continues on. Your heart, your breath, your life and all is fast dissolving blood. And the final poem, I think, is a little more hopeful. It's called What Do You Remember About the Earth? It begins with sunset. So maybe that is already the future. It begins with failure. Trying comes after. It began with a broken twig, the crackle of death under my foot. So that's how we remember Earth. Beginnings aren't always first. I began by falling. Walking came after. I picked myself up in auburns and browns, and I cleared a path in the wilderness, but there was always a footprint before mine. There was always another voice. Thank you. If you enjoyed these poems or are interested in any of my other work, I have a lot of short fiction and some essays on my website, which is just mariscapichette.com. thank you again to Forbes Library and to Faith and everyone else for including my work in this very important and powerful exhibit. And I hope you're enjoying the evening.
Thank you so much. I love those. My mother got a preview of the exhibit. She was proofreading it before it went live, and it was her Cracks was her favorite piece.
Wow.
So next we will hear from Eileen P Kennedy. You unmute, Eileen?
I'm unmuted.
Beautiful.
Thank you to the Forbes and the Hosmer and everyone out there. Jason mentioned that he's really enjoying the poetry. I'm a poet. I'm really enjoying the art. I've had a very art-deprived pandemic season, so it's just wonderful to be in with the artists as well as the other writers. So I'm going to read two poems. The first one is from the exhibit, and I spend my winters in Costa Rica, and of course the pandemic kind of interfered with that this year, but I got my second vaccination in March and I hopped on a plane to Costa Rica. And not long after, I wrote this poem. This is the one in the exhibit, and it's called Montage. 1. Exhausted, I arrive in Costa Rica, pandemic in my rear view. I melt into the warmth. The other guest mid-party in Spanish, the Chilean filmmaker screens her movie about blindness. In Russian, the American reads from her sexually explicit story about Stalin. In English, the Irish sculptor passes Bocas and Rioja. In Sanskrit, the spiritual writer chants in the corner. In silence, the British dancer flirts with the Tico architect. In confusion, I try to follow in any language. 2. Exhausted, I arrive in Costa Rica, pandemic in my rear view. I melt into the warmth. Truth is, all of us die. All roads here lead there, but seldom to the sea. I have a photograph of me and my cousin Sharon, 2 years younger, happy, ocean lapping behind. Bragging about what a good swimmer I was, Sharon nearly died, face down in the sea. She was too big for me, and I couldn't bring her in. I screamed on the shore. Someone noticed and saved her. Later at 50, she would lose her life to breast cancer, the sea still inside us both. 3. Exhausted, I arrive in Costa Rica, pandemic in my rear view. I melt into the warmth. I am the rain pelting your tin roof. The wind helps me purge my fury, rising, rolling, sinking, swimming into the shadows. I will not stop until the earth is soaked, puddling in the dirt. You see your reflection in me. 4. Exhausted, I arrive in Costa Rica, pandemic in my rear view. I melt into the warmth. I am the wind, call me Papagayo, exploding across the Cordillera del Telemancas. I am a fierce gale, knocking bamboo like djembe drums. I could ride all the way to Gibraltar, but I don't. I remain and doze. 5. Exhausted, I arrive in Costa Rica, pandemic in my rear view. I melt into the warmth. I sleep. And my second poem is from a book that was published this year, Touch My Head Softly, from Finishing Line Press. And it's about my partner who died of Alzheimer's. This is called Only Human. The spider spins on my porch each morning. I take the web down and she replaces it, sometimes the same, sometimes different. I would spin for you a house with my body, a mansion laced in sheltered space, a silver threaded cocoon. I would free you with my desire, casting a balloon net, floating in the updraft. I would just defeat this disease which destroys your mind, your tongue, your dazed body with the power of my love. I would write your story better by placing the words so carefully. Watch as the sound of my voice reaches your eyes and you know who I am. Thank you.
Wow. Speechless. So I'm going to ask our last artist of the evening, Doris Madsen, to speak about her work. And after that, we can have questions for any of the presenters. And also there are a few more artists and writers in the room who aren't presenting but can answer questions about them. Doris, can we hear you?
Yes, thank you for having me. And I'm really pleased to be part of this show. Really, it's a great body of work. We live amongst so many talented people. I would like to, I live in East Hampton and I want to do the land acknowledgement that we stand on Nunatak land. We'd also like to acknowledge our neighboring Indigenous nations, the Nipmuc and the Wampanoag to the east, the Mohican and Pequot to the south, the Mohican to the west, and the Abenaki to the north. I have 5 images in this show, but I want to start with this one because from this body of work, I don't really haven't had a chance to describe how it's derived. I have a very large embroidery that my mother made in the 1940s of the historic ship Mayflower. And, you know, I'm left looking at it, wondering what I'm going to do with it. And nobody in the family seemed to want it. And I had hung it, my son had hung it. And it's kind of bizarre. I mean, she was a young woman. She's Jewish. We had nothing to do with the Mayflower. It's probably something she bought to embroider to relax and keep herself, you know, occupied with something like sewing, which can be very therapeutic. So when I took the piece out of the frame, I did some drawings from it. And then I also did some rubbings, and they don't show up. I kind of collaged them. You know, I ended up with a lot of pieces of things done in different processes. I'm also a printmaker, so Ron might understand some of this. But like that, the sign, you see Plymouth, and you see, you know, where they left from. You see the date. This was some of the embroidery of the sea. You'll see in some of the others, the compass. But this one, it's pretty prevalent right here in the middle. This was another, this was a collage piece, also a print done with a lithographic process from a black and white photo of the piece. And you know, I started this, you know, started working with this before the pandemic, and then pandemic began and I couldn't be in the studio, and, you know, spent months at home, not doing my printmaking necessarily, doing some other things, but I started doing these little Indigenous figures, like the one on the bottom, this one. So they're cut out. Here's another one piece that says Plymouth, and the sign here. And then I did these ghost-like figures. And so I was working with a lot of these, and it just became more and more real about what, you know, what I was thinking about, what I was doing. You know, the news of the pandemic was all about, and the summer was all about, you know, racial inequities and white supremacy. And I started realizing what was I doing and what was I making? So it really became an important part of my work, and it will continue. I mean, doing this really changed what I was thinking about. And one of these pieces is actually going to be in the biennial in October at Forbes Library. So you'll get to see it in person. Let's see, how do I go to the next one? I have to go back to the screen, I guess. I can't.
I can put the next one up. Which one do you need? Okay,
this was, you can go to the beginning of this. I think was the last one. You can go back to the beginning of I thought I'd be able to advance it, but I can't. I'm not.
Okay, I got them here.
Okay.
So I'll put one up and you tell me if it's the wrong one. If it's the wrong one, I'll just
do
tab until
whatever.
we get the right one.
They're all different. This one I use stitchery. I did sew on paper. It's a difficult thing to do. I think this is the one that's going to be in the biennial. And so these goats, which are indigenous people, are, they're there. They died. I was doing a lot of reading. I read about King Philip's War. I read about the Mayflower. So this is what happened. This is what our country was built upon, and it's eerie, but I've tried to find I've tried to come around in my work now to find some hope, and it's hard, but this is the reality of what's happened. You can advance. So yeah, this is the one, and it's on top. There's okay, that's fine. So this is the lithograph. This is not collage. This is the lithograph in the middle of the paper. It's just the detail and the sign with Priscilla and John Alden at the bottom of it, and the stitching of the clouds and the stitching of the water. So you really, in person, you do see that stitching. These are not the rubbings. And then the figures are like positive, negative cutout shapes and covering them over. So I like this little figure. I like the shorthand of a little figure. So I think it worked. Okay. This is another collage piece. There is some stitching and little figures cut out from other pieces that I printed. So I used a lot of cutouts. These figures were meant to be like the Sachem, the chiefs. And this is on linen. I printed on linen, and then these are French knots that are blood. So that's really a collage piece as well. Yeah, that's the compass. I really like that. I love maps. And Julie helped me. Julie gave me, I consulted with Julie Bartlett, our librarian, on this. She gave me some advice about finding maps, and I've been looking at a lot of maps. So I'm a retired librarian, so I'd like to have a librarian. If I'm no longer a librarian, I like to have one. So Julie is my librarian that I go to. So yeah, this is the compass in the corner of the embroidery. So it really does have the feeling of the embroidery and the stitches. It's beautiful. And so I'm hopefully starting some new work soon, and we'll see where it goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Doris. I look forward to seeing it again in October.
Yeah, that'll be one piece, a real
That's
piece.
Great. So there have been a few artists and writers' websites and relevant links posted in the chat. And I just wanted to invite you during the Q&A, besides putting questions in there, you can put your web resources in there if you want to. And I just also wanted to say hi to Jessie Merrick, the photographer, and Lisa Caro, the writer, and Tamar Shadur, who does Tapestry. And whatever question, anybody who wants to ask a question, you can just unmute and ask it. I'll just, for the moment, just put this tapestry up.
I just wanted to ask Doris, I couldn't quite figure out from the pictures, they were sort of small on my screen, how she did the stitching. Is the whole thing cloth? Were you stitching cloth?
No, I was stitching paper.
Oh, okay.
I was stitching paper. It's hard to stitch paper, and if it's thin paper, it starts falling apart. But I did what I did, and you know, I don't have to meet any standard.
It's beautiful.
Except my own.
Right.
So
Right.
if it falls apart, it's part of the process. But I've wanted to stitch on it, and it kind of mirrored my mother's stitching.
Right. That's great.
Okay, so any questions to or from anybody? You're welcome to unmute and ask. And this is Tamar's coral bleaching tapestry.
If you want to hear something about what tapestry is to begin with, you're welcome, or how I did this, or what's it's all about, you're welcome to ask. Yeah. Okay, silence in the face of tapestry is kind of typical because it's an unusual art form that I don't think too many people are familiar with. Shall I say more about it? Shall I talk about it?
How about tapestry, or about the coral?
Yeah.
The inspiration for this piece.
Okay, so well, it's woven. You know, some people use the term tapestry kind of loosely for any fabric hanging, but this is a tightly woven weft face weave that takes a long, long time. So the you know, as the title speaks for itself, and I'm sure a lot of you are aware about the state of the oceans, and the dying corals, the dying coral reefs. Probably more than 75% of coral reefs have died already, and I know there's a great effort to revive them in all kinds of amazing contemporary ways. But what inspired this theme to begin with was that I actually had the privilege of being at a coral reef back in the mid-70s and off the coast of Sinai, on the Gulf of Eilat or Aqaba. And it was just one of the most remarkable sights I had ever seen. And then years later, I was there again in 2004, and I had noticed how they looked very different. They had this film on them, and they were basically the picture of dying reefs, and it just really struck me. And so just a few years ago, I came up with this idea to create a tapestry of this theme. The first one I did was actually a small, much more simpler one. And the way I designed it was with collage. I started with a simple collage, and then I kind of experimented with a small, about 10 by 10 inch piece. And then I went and designed the bigger one, which is 29 by 30 inch, this one here. So it's kind of divided into three parts. On the right, there's a depiction of kind of plastic bottles in the sea, and on the top part you see kind of melting in the distance, the melting ice caps, and of course the rising seas and huge waves, storm to represent storms that we have as we speak, and how the colors of coral, which are when they're healthy, are extremely vibrant, are slowly or not so slowly are turning into skeletal forms of themselves after the live matter dies. And so the cargo ship on the left is a representation of human part in this whole deterioration of our seas, planet in general, the pollution in the seas, and kind of representations of man-made stuff in the oceans. There is like many people tonight mentioned, hope, looking for hope, both in beautiful poems and other wonderful artworks. And so it's hard to see in this photo, but on the top left side, there's a dove, which I came up with this idea at the end as I was approaching finishing the tapestry, which I wove, by the way, from the back on its side. So I wove this dove of hope. Some people saw the connection to the Noah's Ark story, which I didn't even think about at all. But people see in it different symbols, and that it's always wonderful for me to hear what people see in the work, So, and also material-wise, it's made of all different kinds of wool and some synthetics, and also I actually wanted to make the plastic aspect of it come alive. So I cut strips of plastic bags from the ones that the newspapers come in, and also plastic netting, and I combine that with my yarns. So if you see it live, and if you look closely, you could see the texture of plastics in parts of it, and metallic threads and other non-wool items. Yeah.
Fantastic, Tamar. Do we have questions from anyone to anyone? If not, I have one. Okay, my question goes back to Kylie. And you had said that you drew inspiration and words from a book when you wrote the poems, and I was wondering were they all from the same book about the Arctic, or different sources? And as far as the images that are also collaged into the poems, I was wondering where those came from.
Yeah, thank you. It is all from one book. It was it's called The Arctic Diary of Russell Williams Porter. And he was an artist too, so the illustrations come from the book. The words are all from the book. And I just completely cut it up. Yeah. I have a craft essay that was just published that I can drop in the chat too, if anyone wants more information about the whole story of it coming together.
Thank you. I'm seeing all kinds of wonderful things in the chat, but none of them look like questions. Let me put this back to gallery view. I can see all of us. Does anyone have anything to add? Okay. I didn't see a hand. So if you wanted to say something and I didn't see you, just unmute and say it. Well, thank you all so much for participating in the exhibit and for coming and talking to us about your work. This has been wonderful. I want to thank also Art Middleton for curating the writing selections. He did a fantastic job. And thank Julie Bartlett Nelson for making things go smoothly, except where I was able to break them anyway once in a while. Couldn't do it without you, Julie. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Faith.
Thank you. This was great.
Thank you. It was a great show. Congratulations to everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
It was a wonderful way to spend my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good
night.